Hello, welcome to the Future Food Finance Podcast. It's a bit of a summer break, but we are back. My name is David Stevenson.
And my name is Paul Cuatrecasas.
We've been away for a couple of weeks and sort of on kind of a low maintenance at the moment because we've all been on holidays. But we've come back and we're going to talk a little bit about a few topics. We're going to talk a bit about what's been happening in the public markets because, bated breath, it looks like public markets might be coming back into life again. Been a bit of a rally. There's interesting developments in the food tech space. I'm also going to quickly mention what's been going on in the Middle East, which I think is interesting. And then Paul's going to talk us through why I think the whole drone sector is so interesting at the moment. Well, something I'm particularly interested in, I have to say. But let's just quickly spoof through public market stuff. There is interesting stuff going on. So, for instance, the poster child of the food tech sector, which is Beyond Meat, which is at a terrible 6 to 12 months. In the last couple of months has actually doubled in price, the share price that is, even though there's still been a kind of constant drip of bad news about product launches and problems with pizza and so forth. The share price is looking a bit rosier at the moment. It's also seen some deal activity. So we've seen Ginkgo Bioworks, big Syn bio company, take over Zymergen, which was, his share price had sort of been becalmed. And that's interesting. So beginning to see M&A activity of kind of taking out some of the smaller cap businesses. We're beginning to hear about IPOs, unbelievably, even though you think about it because the markets are so bearish. But the rumor on the street is that Instacart might well be planning an IPO at the end of the year, despite everything. We're also seeing quite a lot of activity with some of the funders and investors in this space. So Agronomics has been, I think, pretty much every month, maybe I've got this wrong, but been announcing a new deal, new investment. They've literally just put some money into an outfit called Clean Food Company. And also there's even been some kind of attempt to rename companies. So there was an Israeli company listed on NASDAQ called Meatech, which has now changed its name to, and I like this, Stakeholder. Get it? Steak, not with an AK, but EAK. Stakeholder, which is a great name. And Edison have just done a research report on it. And I think what this tells you is that there is some life left yet in the whole food tech sector. And I think that if the markets have bottomed out, which, by the way, I don't think they have done, but that's a separate question. But if the markets have bottomed out and tech's coming a little bit more back into favour, I think it could be an interesting point for food tech, because food tech, of course, started falling well before the general market turned bearish. So, there's a possibility, possibly, that the whole food tech sector might have hit a trough. We don't know. We'll soon see in the next couple of months. And just the other thing before we get on to Paul and drones is I've been seeing a lot of deals coming through in the private markets from VCs involving the Middle East. And that's not really surprising. There's always been the kind of water scarcity issues. There's also food scarcity issues in those countries, not because they don't have enough food, but because they don't have big internal farming sectors. So we're beginning to see a lot of deals come through. I saw a mycelium or mushroom plant in Oman. There's been a bunch of deals in the UAE, Kuwait, Saudi. And let's not forget that because there's been a rapprochement between a lot of the big Middle Eastern states, certainly the Gulf states, and the Israelis. The Israelis are very strong on food tech. That could be a very interesting area, and I think we're going to see a lot of vertical farms emerging over there. So, Paul, before we get on to Jones, any observations?
No, I would just say that, look, we don't know what's going to happen next in the public markets tomorrow or the next week or next year. Nobody knows. We do know, however, that food tech, as we've been discussing it and talking about it, is growing and is going to grow no matter what happens in the markets. And therefore, the ability to get access as an investor to these companies that are private, that are growing, that don't suffer the consequences of the ups and downs of daily public markets is extremely valuable. So nothing's changed in that front. And those companies that are listed, like a Beyond Meat or Deliveroo, are at risk from the usual ups and downs of the markets. Yeah. But generally speaking, totally agree with you on that. And I'm excited by some of the step changes that we're seeing that are reflected in the markets, public markets. So major change tends to happen when there are certain events, a regulatory event, It could be new law passing. It could be new technology being launched, like the iPhone. And what we're seeing as a result of the recent inflation, increase in rates, the issues in the supply chain, semiconductor shrinkage, shortage, and of course the conflict in Ukraine causing oil and gas prices to rise is, on the one hand, which everybody reads about, the interest in renewable energy, in wind and solar in particular, and the amount of funds that are increasingly becoming available from the governments, talking here about mainly UK and US, but also in other European countries, because there's an increased awareness and understanding that Western countries need to ease their dependency on other countries like Russia for any core asset or any core fuel source, for example, oil and gas. And so that is happening. And so this new investment is rushing in to alternative energy. We're seeing that in my firm. Now, what most people wouldn't think of when it comes to the inflation and interest rate dynamics that we're seeing play out in the US and the UK, for example, in the grocery stores and food prices, is something like drones, because it just feels Jetsons. It just feels so far out in the future that it can't be real. There are too many complications. These things are going to be too loud. They're a danger to people. They're going to crash and kill people, or hit cars on a road, and there's going to be car accidents, or they're going to be too many and they can't be regulated. There's one thing after another when it comes to beliefs about drones being possible. And I think similar to how the horse and cart was replaced by the automobile, and I'm not talking about the early days, but the Model T and how the automobile became a mass market transportation vehicle. It had to be regulated. It had to be managed. There had to be traffic systems, traffic lights and roads. And it won't be too different with drones. And then you can imagine many municipalities and governments are working on that right now. Now, why are we talking about drones? It is transportation cost, labor cost, the cost of petrol, use of vans, cars, bicycles is a fairly major cost when it comes to food delivery, whether it's restaurant delivery, food delivery, grocery delivery, or just generally e-commerce delivery, which most of us have experienced at least through Amazon. That's expensive today. It's relatively expensive, and it's getting more expensive with inflation, with interest rates going up, with labor costs rising. It's getting expensive. It's getting more difficult to do. And we don't want a world generally that's going backwards, where we've gotten used to deliveries. Certainly we get spoiled in some places where you have Amazon Prime delivering within a few hours or the same day. We don't want to go backwards. And instead of getting it in a day, we get it in a week or 3 or 4 days. So drones are a way of solving that. They probably cost 10 to 20% of the normal cost of delivery today. And I'll just touch on that briefly. And it's quite simple, really. Today, a driver of a car or a van that's delivering food or restaurant, groceries or restaurant food, would tend to be able to do, let's call it 2 deliveries in an hour. A drone can do about 20 deliveries in an hour. In Ireland, there's a company called Mana Aero, that has been delivering groceries and food, including coffee, for the last, I think, year and a half in a few small communities. They're doing about 70 to 80 deliveries a day. It's ramping up to 200. It's gone extremely well. People love it. They can do deliveries in about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Just take your mobile app. You can order a coffee from the local shop. The coffee goes to the top of a Tesco building. The drone can get it to your backyard in about 4 or 5 minutes. That's a game changer. Man Aero in particular is planning. They just announced, I think a few days ago, that they will be doing a project in the US by the end of the year. They're also planning to launch commercial service in a suburb of Dublin of 100,000 people. They plan by the end of the year. This is exciting stuff. There are other drone companies. You may have heard of Amazon Air, which is Amazon drones, which they've launched in the US, and they're starting out with the Amazon Prime customers. There's also Flytrax, an Israeli company that's delivering today in about 5 or 6 different states in the US, actual commercial deliveries. So it's not future, it's not Jetsons. It is here today. It's in commercial service. I would expect, as Bobby Healy of Mana Aero told me a year ago, they will be delivering in Europe next year or the year after that. And in 3 or 4 years, they have very big plans. The economic savings is tremendous. It's a game changer. This is the moment, I believe, where it has to happen because of the pressure the governments are under for things like rise in utility costs, oil and gas, utility costs, food costs, lack of supplies. It's causing pain in households. That's painful in terms of votes. I think we're going to see more flexibility than we've seen in the past to regulations and laws getting passed to allow drones, which work perfectly well from a technology point of view, to get these drones working in practice because it will save money. It will also save time. It will, and this is important, I haven't commented on this, it will save a lot of carbon being emitted to the air because an little electric drone emits a lot less, I can't tell you how much, I don't know, but a lot less carbon than a diesel or petrol-fueled automobile and probably less carbon than an electric vehicle. So that's where it gets extremely interesting to have drones delivering goods that would otherwise be delivered by either a petrol or electric vehicle. It solves so many problems. And so that's why I thought we should just take a few minutes to talk about it today. I even have seen a company that's so intriguing. It's called Drone Deck. It's so intriguing that I felt I should share a video for what it's worth. It takes about a minute and a half. And it describes the future of drones as a postman doing postal deliveries, but deliveries of not just post, but of all kinds of other goods, and doing it in a way that provides security and authenticity, where we don't have theft and all the things you would typically associate with this kind of delivery. So would it be good for me to show a video, perhaps, of a drone in action or how it's going to look? And
yeah, that's great. Yeah, let's go for it. Let's have a look. Let's see if this works.
Yeah,
and talk us through it if we can't. If we're listening to other podcasts as well,
okay, great. So just bear with me for a second here, and we will get that done. All right. So, Drone Deck, next generation mailbox. Let me speed it up a little bit. There's the drone flying overhead, presumably not very loud, looking over a mailbox, a new type of mailbox that's using GPS technology, and hovers over the mailbox and has an encrypted opening protocol to open the mailbox so that it's safe. It drops the package into that encrypted mailbox and lets go of the hook. The mailbox closes. It can be opened with a keypad by the user. There's a certain app that allows you to unlock and verify that package. You can also do it, scan for explosive biohazards, scan for other information. There's ultraviolet light that kills bacteria. It's climate controlled, so if you have a hot pizza, it keeps it hot, or it keeps medicine cold. That's their claim. It then actually flashes lights as well, so it can contact emergency services if there's any kind of emergency or problem. There's a slot in it for traditional mail. If you've got postage that you want to drop off and get picked up by drone. So it sends and receives mail, which is really cool. Then there's this little auto EV, electric vehicle, that can come by and pick up the mail if it's not going to be by drone. So it can be opened with an app instead of a keypad. It's also got a biometric scanner. It really is thought through everything, including energy. So there's induction charging that can charge the drones at the top in case they don't have enough electricity to finish the trip. So they've really thought through everything. Extremely clever. Not entirely real yet, but about to be real. What I like about that is that, yes, it's a startup, and yes, it hasn't started commercial service, although it is starting in Indiana, I think in the next month or two. So it is going to become commercial very soon. But I like that they thought of everything. They thought of charging the drone, and they thought about security, and they thought about sending and receiving. And it's just an example, right? It's just one thing. It's not necessarily going to be the thing.
And what I thought, Paul, was interesting was I was going to mention this before we put the video on, which is that every time I go to my mum's in Northamptonshire, I drive through Northampton, and they've got these little robots trundling around the street in Northampton. That integration of drone and robots, the little robots, they're small.
Well, and that also to point out, in that video, you saw the little vehicle come by. Yeah. And again, a lot of people think, oh, that's Jetsons, that's future. No, not at all. There are already several companies that have developed several of these vehicles. One of them, Neuro, which I think Amazon or a very big tech company, maybe because Walmart invested in it, They exist. They're working. Cruise Automation, which was acquired by GM in 2016 for $600 million, which is now worth between 20 and 30 billion. They've developed vehicles like that are operating today. So it's not future stuff. It's real, and it's a game changer. It's very exciting. So when we get caught up, David, talking about the publicly listed food tech companies like Deliveroo and Just Eat and so on, well, it's going to be very interesting to see which companies adopt this technology as quickly as they can and how they adopt it, whether they just are a simple supplier or whether they get involved in influencing.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's already loads of commentary around Uber moving into the auto-driven space, be it, cars that drive themselves or little trundling robots or drones or whatever it is. I'm sure Uber, with its vision of being the kind of, the utility of transport, will be all over that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also about the future of transportation. So groceries, food, medicine, and the like come first. And that's what we're already seeing. If you talk to Bobby at Manna, they have been delivering coffee, pizza, McDonald's, Tesco groceries from the top of the Tesco's building. And that's kind of where it starts. And that's why, for one reason, it's relevant for us in food tech. But ultimately, we're talking about the automation of e-commerce, the full automation from end to end, full solution of automation, which will take humans out of the equation to a large degree. And you're right, that will extend ultimately to taxis. I mean, again, GM Cruise has agreed a 9-year deal, I believe, with UAE or Dubai, exclusive deal for their taxi service to be the robo-taxi for 9 years with GM. They're already operating in San Francisco today, a commercial, totally automated cruise service. So again, that's already real and it's happening. And I think if we went back to the horse and cart just before Model T, most people complained about the automobile. Yeah. Why? Because it was too bumpy and it would break down and the part would break. And when it broke,
exactly.
It's like electric vehicles. You can't find a way to charge it. I was in Grosvenor Square, London, walking by the street. And there are charging slots there, but they're always charging cars. So if you want to get charged, you can't expect just to go to a street like that because it's always going to be full. You have to wait 10 or 15 minutes for somebody to come off. So all of these infrastructure problems, issues, challenges have to be solved, but they will be solved. They will be.
Yeah. And it always makes me laugh. When I was in Italy, many of the big Italian cities don't even have Uber because there's been big resistance from the existing taxi companies. And I laugh when I speak to locals and they go, well, listen, guys, you're fighting the wrong battle, because Uber, when it gets in its stride, or something like Uber is going to be having self-driven cars, and you're still complaining about cars that are driven by humans, which is what the Uber Mark 1 is. When Uber Mark 2 comes along, you really have got problems on your hands.
I mean, Uber has its challenges, and not everybody is a fan of Uber. But the point is that if it's not Uber, it's someone else, or it's Uber version 2.0. It's all coming. And I think when we investors think about investing, it's all, it's just reminding people the point to not invest on the basis of what you see right in front of you or what you believe.
Yes, I completely agree.
What exists today. It reminds me when, our kids were 3 or 4 years old, and my wife was saying, well, we need to build a big treehouse for them as they are now 3 years old. I'm like, no, because by the time it finishes, they'll be doing something else. And a few years later, they're on their iPads. And so it's the same thing. You've got to think ahead, project where everything is going and invest in that. Because when you invest, it's always the future. It's not the past. Where's that puck going? What's going to look like? And drones are coming. If you're investing just for the next year, if you're doing a trade or a flip, no. That's probably not going to be relevant.
The next 5-10 years, definitely.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Right. On that point, we're going to come back in a couple of weeks' time with another subject. In the meantime, stay safe.
And sleep well.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Bye.